"What do you mean, no? I will destroy your life." I nearly lost my grip on the mug as Karen Morrison's deranged, high-pitched screaming violently shattered the pre-dawn peace. The HOA Supreme Commander had just delivered a non-negotiable directive. I was required to instantly surrender my secured, private yacht for her evening extortion event. Before we move forward, comment down from where you're watching right now. When I deployed a singular measured refusal, she immediately transitioned into aggressive property damage mode, hurling personal effects into the lake, and unleashed a torrent of escalating threats in front of the assembled neighborhood. I possessed no initial frame of reference for how a simple assertion of private ownership could mutate an elected official into such a spectacular, frothing monster until she formally declared unilateral, total war against me. But allow me to execute a tactical memory recall and brief you on precisely how this financial catastrophe was engineered. 20 minutes prior, I was fully immersed in the most perfectly calibrated Saturday morning sensory experience imaginable. The ambient mist was suspended above Clearwater Lake like expensive, pristine silk, and the deck of my yacht offered the profound, absolute silence that unilaterally validates the entire asset acquisition expense. 6 months of ownership and the sunrise coffee ritual remained an unassailable point of operational calm. Steam ascended from my mug in precise, controlled spirals, mirroring the gentle fog lifting from the water's surface. This tranquility was the exact, deliberate reason I executed the financial transfer into the Maplewood Shores community, a gated, waterfront financial ecosystem where multi-million-dollar assets sit on secured, pristine lots, and the HOA theoretically enforces standards designed to permanently protect every resident's core investment. My encrypted communication device registered a high-priority contact against the teak surface. Karen Morrison, HOA President. 7:15 a.m. on a weekend. Immediate, critical red flag. In 6 months of secured residency, Karen had never once initiated a direct, personal communication vector. All previous HOA mandates were communicated via official, documented corporate letters or mass community email broadcasts. This direct contact was demonstrably irregular, personal, invasive, and aggressively urgent. "David, I have secured wonderful, non-negotiable news." Her voice was saturated with a veneer of synthetic sweetness, precisely the vocal pattern she deploys when preparing to execute a massive, asymmetrical demand. Channel 7 News has confirmed they will feature our collective community yacht party tonight for their 6 p.m. broadcast. I strategically secured my coffee, immediately isolating the massive tactical hazard concealed beneath her forced enthusiasm. The way she aggressively emphasized our collective community yacht party instantly triggered high-priority threat assessment. Yacht party? What sanctioned yacht party? Across the marina's stillness, I visually confirmed her position, pacing frantically on the main dock, her clipboard physically secured to her chest like mission-essential armor. Even at 50 yards, her acute operational stress was visible in the rapid, high-intensity transit pattern that was visibly scarring the timber planks. She was aggressively monitoring her device, refusing incoming communications, her free hand executing wild, chaotic gestures as she spoke. "Oh, I was absolutely certain I had deployed this information yesterday. 50 VIP guests, including State Senator Williams, all confirmed for 6 p.m. tonight for the Children's Hospital charity drive." Her vocal tone deployed that toxic assumption of unquestioning compliance, as if the decision had been ratified by an entity far superior to myself, and I was merely being briefed on my mandated participation status. The critical data points immediately converged with sickening clarity. She had unilaterally committed my private, secured yacht to 50 complete strangers without securing my authorization, without deploying even a preliminary inquiry regarding the possibility. Karen, you are categorically forbidden from, I never authorized this operation. My response was measured, controlled, and clinically precise, but internally, the cold corporate fury was achieving critical velocity. It was the identical suffocating sensation I experienced when executives guaranteed impossible outcomes by recklessly deploying other entities' capital. That was the decisive moment her synthetic sweet facade completely shattered, violently revealing the desperate, high-stakes predator beneath the professional veneer. "Are you truly initiating a tactical withdrawal?" she aggressively hissed. "I have already guaranteed them access. The senator is currently in transit, and Channel 7's camera crew locks in their operational window at 4 p.m. sharp." I visually confirmed her hand violently securing the dock railing, her knuckles bleached white against the weathered timber. My yacht gently stabilized beneath me, a critical physical reminder of the asset that was legally defined as mine versus the asset she erroneously perceived as belonging to the collective community. "I am not deploying my secured yacht for your VIP guests. You were required to request authorization first." Her response was terminal and spectacularly destructive. The clipboard was instantly deployed into the lake with a cataclysmic splash that generated chaotic ripple patterns across the placid morning surface. Documentation scattered like financial shrapnel on the breeze, some pieces floating, others ensnared in the rigging. Karen's meticulously organized extortion planning was literally disintegrating before my analytical observation. "You are forbidden from executing this action against me." Her vocal projection fractured with raw, genuine panic, echoing violently across the water and guaranteeing the immediate operational wake-up of every nearby residential asset. My reputation, the children's charity, my entire career. The irony was not lost on my analysis. She was screaming about charitable endeavors while simultaneously demanding the unilateral theft of a massive private asset that was explicitly not hers to deploy. "Your planning deficiency is not my immediate operational emergency, Karen." The measured words hung in the quiet morning air with absolute, irreversible finality. She executed a rapid, frustrated kick against the dock post with her footwear, immediately seizing her foot and initiating a frantic hopping pattern. Here was a woman, the elected fiduciary head of a multi-million-dollar community, executing a full-scale physical tantrum because her absolute authority had been defied. My encrypted device signaled an incoming notification. The sender header caused an immediate pause. "Concerned Neighbor 2024 at https aren't or www.google.com search securemail.com. The subject line was chillingly specific. She executed this exact theft against the Johnsons last year. I accessed the message while Karen continued her aggressive rant regarding community fiduciary responsibility and my obvious antisocial self-interest. The data was concise, but high impact. "Do not allow her to execute this bullying. Evidence attached. She has a predictable pattern of criminal behavior." The attachment was an aerial photograph of the marina, confirming where the Johnson family's private dock should have been. There was only a sign proclaiming Maplewood Shores Community Boating Access. She had done this before. "David, are you processing this communication?" Karen's vocal tone had transitioned from aggressive demanding to forced, synthetic pleading. "These are VIP guests. The senator's staff has officially confirmed his attendance. Channel 7 has aggressively promoted this entire operation on their morning broadcast. We are facing major, irreversible media exposure for our community." She fumbled through documentation that had survived the clipboard failure, deploying what appeared to be official legal documents. The community charter explicitly mandates that assets exceeding a certain valuation threshold can be utilized for sanctioned charitable purposes. It is all perfectly legal. I executed a cold, hard rejection of the premise. I required immediate verification from the title company. For one critical fraction of a second, her confident facade violently destabilized. A micro-expression of raw, genuine fear flashed across her features. She knew the documents were fraudulent. Channel 7's field crew arrives at 4:04 p.m. for operational setup. The catering logistics division requires immediate access at 3:00 p.m. She was desperately constructing a psychological wall of logistical impossibility. I knew what I had to do. I secured the call to the title company and immediately forwarded the critical evidence to my secure evidence archive. Karen had just provided the precise, documented evidence needed to transition this conflict from a property dispute to a federal criminal investigation. The war had just begun, and the first shot was a spectacular display of forgery and greed. Karen Morrison executed her demand based on a catastrophic miscalculation of her target. She perceived me as a simple, high-net-worth civilian whose only defense would be a basic property lawyer, someone who would fold under the immediate pressure of massive fines and public ridicule. She saw a man enjoying his sunrise coffee. Her failure was that she completely missed the entire forensic architecture of my professional life. I am David Clark, and my career was not spent acquiring assets. It was spent dismantling fraud. For nearly 2 decades, I operated as a high-stakes corporate negotiations and contractual litigation specialist. My expertise was the precise identification of fatal procedural flaws and systemic executive deception within multi-million-dollar corporate agreements. I was a professional asset liquidator whose sole purpose was to find the one manipulated sentence, the one mismatched font, or the single uncertified seal that guaranteed the complete, unappealable financial collapse of a non-compliant entity. Karen Morrison's document fraud was an amateur-hour presentation to a man whose job was to financially incinerate corporate liars for a living. The yacht itself was far more than a luxury acquisition. It was a physical manifestation of earned autonomy. After 20 years of continuous, high-intensity corporate combat, I sought a sanctuary, a place where the rules were clean, the documents were true, and the environment was low risk. The yacht was my reward for successfully navigating countless storms of fraud and deceit. When Karen attacked my private sanctuary, she attacked the entire principle of my retirement. She wasn't just attempting theft, she was launching a direct personal assault on my hard-earned peace. This violation was unforgivable. My professional discipline is rooted in the absolute, non-negotiable authority of documentation. My skill set is not emotional, it is purely analytical. When Karen's documents hit my hands, I didn't see an HOA threat. I saw a contract breach. I immediately initiated my internal professional protocol, a systematic, cold-blooded analysis of the entire organizational structure. She believed her paper threat would work because the average homeowner lacks the resources and the specialized knowledge to verify the authenticity of a document, to confirm whether the county authority she cited was genuine or an unconstitutional fabrication. My immediate call to the title company and the county attorney's office was the tactical move of an expert who knows precisely which lever to pull to trigger maximum, irreversible consequence. The mysterious email, the one confirming her prior systematic property theft against the Johnson family's doc, was the critical intelligence I needed. It validated my hypothesis. Karen wasn't just greedy, she was operating a predictable pattern of organized crime disguised as community governance. Her operation relied on the financial coercion of her victims, fining them until they were legally and emotionally exhausted, forcing them to sell their property at a loss, which Karen would then illegally convert into a community asset for her own profit scheme. This realization fueled a cold, surgical fury. The conflict had just escalated from defending my yacht to executing a community-wide liberation. My response to her threat was not driven by anger, but by a professional mandate to restore integrity to a corrupted system. She had relied on civilian compliance. I was about to deploy a strategic counterattack using the precise, high-level legal statutes that govern fraud, corporate governance, and criminal conspiracy. The immediate verification of my yacht's unencumbered title confirmed that her entire premise was a lie. Her subsequent attempt to deploy a forged signature and impersonate government authority sealed her fate, providing me with the irrefutable evidence required for federal intervention. Karen Morrison had fatally mistaken professional restraint for personal weakness. She was about to learn that when you attempt to defraud a specialist in corporate fraud, the resulting consequence is not a settlement. It is total, systemic annihilation. My entire background as a corporate litigator was about to be deployed to dismantle a suburban criminal enterprise, and I would pursue the financial, legal, and criminal penalties until every last asset Karen acquired through her theft was fully liquidated, and every victim was wholly restituted. Karen Morrison's operational hub was not the community clubhouse. It was a sophisticated, multi-layered extortion system disguised as governance, and my tactical objective was to expose its entire, rotten foundation. The initial confrontation over the yacht was merely the visible surface of a deep-seated criminal conspiracy. The immediate and definitive confirmation of her fraud was crucial, but I needed to understand her operational budget, the millions she had stolen and laundered. My investigation immediately focused on identifying her political ties and documenting the full extent of her past victim harassment, confirming this was a systematic criminal enterprise and not just an isolated case of greed. My forensic audit began with the community's public filings, but quickly transitioned to an analysis of her external connections. Why was a single HOA president able to deploy forged county authorization documents and command the attendance of a state senator? The answer lay in her calculated, predatory political network. Karen had used her position not just to steal property, but to generate untraceable, laundered cash, which she converted into legitimate-looking political contributions and high-profile charity donations. These donations bought her access, favors, and, most critically, institutional protection from local law enforcement and county regulators who owed her favors. The very system designed to catch her was corrupted by her own illegal funding stream. The full scope of her past victim harassment was unearthed through the anonymous network of the true hero in this narrative, Robert Morgan. Robert's meticulous 2-year investigation provided the indisputable timeline of her systematic asset theft, exposing the shocking scale of her operations. She wasn't stealing for community use, she was stealing for revenue generation. The Miller family's pool house was converted to a community aquatic center, which Karen then secretly rented out for private high-fee weddings. The Henderson family's garden became a community organic farm, generating revenue through private subscriptions that flowed directly into Karen's personal accounts. She executed these thefts using the same precise methodology: forged documents, intimidation tactics, and financial coercion against residents who lacked the resources to fight a prolonged legal battle. Robert's data confirmed she had successfully executed this criminal methodology to illegally acquire over $4.7 million in private property value across 3 separate counties. This financial analysis revealed the true, chilling purpose of her power structure. Karen was not concerned with grass length or paint colors. She was running an organized crime syndicate that used the HOA's legal authority as a shield and a tool for institutional theft. Her high-profile charity events were merely camouflage, a way to clean the stolen money and buy protection from politicians who were none the wiser about the source of her wealth. She had successfully weaponized democratic governance into a sophisticated apparatus for personal financial gain. Her attempt to fine me $1,000 per day and blacklist me from my own property was the final desperate move of a predator who realized her theft was exposed. This escalation, this move to systematic social and financial isolation, was her learned response to resistance. She assumed the pressure of a coordinated community attack, with contractors canceling services and neighbors crossing the street, would force me to submit, just as it had forced the Johnsons to sell their home. But what she failed to comprehend was that the pressure she was applying was simply generating the final undeniable evidence of criminal conspiracy and abuse of office. The final ingredients required to elevate the entire case into the federal criminal jurisdiction that Robert Morgan had been patiently waiting for. The operational phase of the investigation was initiated the moment I completed the call to the county attorney's office and received the chilling confirmation that Karen Morrison's county authorization documents were a complete, documented fabrication. This was the definitive proof that her act was not a mere bylaw dispute. It was a brazen criminal effort to impersonate government authority, a severe felony. But the true surgical execution of her demise was handled not by me, but by my newly revealed strategic partner, Robert Morgan. I drove to the former Johnson dock, the site of Karen's first documented property theft, and met the man who would turn this local dispute into a massive federal indictment. Robert was no ordinary angry neighbor. He was a retired federal prosecutor specializing in white-collar criminal syndicates, and he had been building this case against Karen for 2 agonizing years. Robert's war room, his dining room table, was the epicenter of the technical discovery phase. He had executed the forensic audit I could only dream of. His evidence package included years of meticulous financial records, bank statements, recorded coaching sessions where Karen was instructing witnesses to lie, and certified property transfer documents detailing the $4.7 million in private assets she had illegally converted. The core of his discovery was the complete breakdown of her RICO, Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, pattern. Property theft disguised as community improvement, the Miller Pool House, the Henderson Garden, to generate private rental revenue, which she then laundered through shell corporations and fake charities. He confirmed that the Children's Hospital fundraising event was mere camouflage, a perfect way to clean stolen money and purchase political protection from corrupt local officials who were none the wiser about the source of her campaign funds. My evidence, the forged yacht documents, the live television claims, and the threat of illegal fines, was the final high-profile ignition trigger Robert had been patiently waiting for. His network, cultivated over decades in federal service, was instantly activated. We confirmed the jurisdictional escalation. The multi-county scale of the fraud, the use of forged government seals, and the abuse of elected authority were all textbook conditions that mandated immediate FBI and federal prosecutor involvement. Robert's strategy was brilliant and brutal. He didn't need a single piece of new evidence. He just needed to package the overwhelming existing data with the public, high-profile spectacle of the failed yacht seizure. My single refusal had inadvertently provided the perfect televised crime. Robert immediately dispatched the full, organized evidence package to his contacts within the FBI's Financial Crimes Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office. The case was already being pre-filed under seal. The confrontation was no longer an HOA problem. It was now a pending federal indictment against an organized criminal enterprise. The technical discovery confirmed that the fines Karen was threatening were empty noise. The real leverage was the certainty of a federal prosecution that would seize every asset she had illegally acquired, dismantling her network from the ground up and guaranteeing her not just removal from office, but a mandatory minimum sentence in a federal facility. Karen Morrison was now operating under extreme pressure, completely exposed by the immediate activation of federal intelligence assets. Her tactical objective shifted from theft to systemic character assassination, realizing her only defense was to destroy my reputation before the indictment dropped. She was a cornered animal, and the escalation was immediate, brutal and public. Her final, most dangerous weapon was the community itself. The very next morning, my entire life was torpedoed. My service contractors, landscaping, pool maintenance, security patrol, all delivered synchronized, official-looking notices of service termination, citing unresolved compliance issues and official HOA non-cooperation. Karen had weaponized the entire service infrastructure against me, leveraging her authority to systematically isolate and financially harass me. This was her learned response to resistance. She didn't just want me out of the HOA, she wanted to make my life unlivable until I capitulated and fled the community. But the masterpiece of her revenge was the emergency HOA meeting notice taped to my front door. Urgent community safety concern. Emergency board meeting today at 10 a.m. to address David Clark's refusal to comply with community safety protocols and his disruption of authorized charitable activities. She was executing a masterful piece of political reframing, attempting to re-engineer last night's documented fraud as my selfish obstruction of charity. By 9:30 a.m., the community center was packed, filled with every resident Karen could mobilize, creating the visual and emotional appearance of overwhelming community support for her position. I walked into the room, knowing I was facing not just one woman, but a crowd successfully manipulated to support a criminal conspiracy. Karen stood at the official podium, wearing a veneer of conservative authority, and launched into her pre-written monologue, artfully omitting any mention of forged documents or federal felonies. One resident's refusal to cooperate with community obligations resulted in a public embarrassment that reflects poorly on all of us, she began, claiming the absolute moral high ground. She transformed my defense of my private property into selfish obstruction of charity, painting me as the antisocial villain who had deliberately sabotaged a fundraiser for sick children. The distortion was breathtaking, and the crowd was buying the narrative completely, looking at me with genuine disapproval. Karen's genius lay in her ability to convert property theft into a moral imperative. The confrontation climaxed when she revealed the true purpose of the theatrical production. She was using community anger to legitimize punitive measures against me for refusing her fraud. Under HOA regulations, residents who consistently obstruct community welfare can face escalating consequences, she announced, escalating the threat. Effective immediately, Mr. Clark will lose access to all community amenities, including the marina facilities. Additionally, he'll face daily fines of $1,000 until he agrees to participate constructively. She called for a voice vote, and the response was an overwhelming roar of approval. The motion carried. She had successfully convinced 50 families that punishing me for defending my property rights was a victory for community values. Then, she delivered the final punch. Mr. Clark, you have 24 hours to remove your yacht from the community marina facilities. She was trying to illegally ban me from the very dock I paid for. I stood up to address the crowd, but Karen immediately shut me down, suspending my speaking privileges and cementing the crowd's perception of my antisocial behavior. But the damage had already been done, not by me, but by her. My phone was ringing before I reached my front door. It was Detective Williams, sounding excited. Mr. Clark, did you record any of that meeting? Because if you did, we just got handed the best evidence of criminal conspiracy we could have asked for. Karen's need for community validation had driven her to commit the final, fatal error. She had organized community harassment and property theft, felonies defined by law as abuse of office and violation of civil rights under color of authority. The prosecutor's ultimate charge was now irrefutable. Karen had successfully achieved her objective of isolating me, but in doing so, she had provided the federal government with perfect, non-negotiable proof that her criminal enterprise was using the power of her elected position to commit systematic civil rights violations. Her temporary victory in that meeting was the final piece of evidence required to move the entire case from county fraud to federal prosecution. The fines were a lie. The federal prison sentence was becoming a certainty. Karen Morrison had achieved her temporary, toxic victory. She had successfully weaponized the community into sanctioning my illegal expulsion and voting for massive, fraudulent daily fines. She believed her institutional power had secured her victory. Her arrogance was about to deliver her into the hands of a federal indictment. The next morning, the retaliatory phase was initiated by the very entities she had spent her career trying to subvert: the federal prosecutor's office and the FBI. My phone rang, and the voice on the other end, Detective Williams, was excited. "Mr. Clark, we've been busy. Karen Morrison is facing federal charges as of this morning: fraud, conspiracy, violation of civil rights under color of authority, and impersonating government officials." The community meeting, the one she orchestrated to destroy me, had provided the final necessary piece of evidence for a criminal conspiracy charge. The revelation was immediately amplified by the true architect of her downfall, Robert Morgan. My polite, quiet neighbor was no longer just a victim. He was now fully revealed as a retired federal prosecutor with 3 decades of experience in white-collar crime. Robert's war room was now operational. He confirmed my contribution was critical. The high-resolution recording of the HOA meeting, where the community voted to sanction and harass a resident for defending his property, provided irrefutable proof of abuse of office, a charge that federal prosecutors love because it demonstrates a fundamental corruption of democratic processes. Robert's strategy was ruthless and absolute. It wasn't about the yacht anymore. It was about systemic annihilation. He was working directly with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office to dismantle her entire network. The initial arrest was merely the pin that popped her multi-million-dollar fraud balloon. The investigation was now revealing the true, shocking scope of her empire. She had stolen $4.7 million in property value across 3 counties, using her HOA position to launder the proceeds through fake charity organizations and purchase political protection from corrupt county commissioners and state legislative aides. Karen wasn't just a bully. She was the operational head of an organized criminal syndicate. The news of Karen's arrest hit the community like a financial bomb. The local papers ran front-page headlines: HOA President arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. The entire narrative was instantly flipped. The isolation I had faced the previous day immediately dissolved into a wave of embarrassed, apologetic, and terrified calls. Neighbors who had enthusiastically voted for my expulsion were now tripping over themselves to apologize, confirming they had been weaponized against an innocent neighbor. The public humiliation was total, but the legal retaliation was just beginning. Robert confirmed the sheer scale of the operation. The FBI and IRS-CID, Criminal Investigation Division, were now actively tracking her money laundering operations, seizing boxes of documents and computer equipment from the community center. Arrest warrants were being issued for at least 6 other co-conspirators: the campaign treasurer, 2 county commissioners, and a legislative aide. Karen had traded a petty HOA fine for a RICO-level indictment that was collapsing her entire political and financial structure. The beauty of Robert's plan was the focus on permanent, systemic change. His legal pursuit went beyond mere criminal conviction. He was ensuring that the case would set a massive federal precedent against HOA authority overreach, leveraging the unique facts of the Yacht confrontation to establish that individual property rights are protected by federal civil rights laws. Karen's downfall was not just a victory for me. It was the accidental catalyst for nationwide reform of HOA governance structures. Her need to steal a yacht for a party had cost her everything, and the price of that theft was about to pay for the complete restitution of every single victim she had ever abused. The arrest of Karen Morrison marked the point of no return. The subsequent criminal indictment, fueled by the evidence I provided, became a devastating legal spectacle. 6 months later, I watched Karen Morrison shuffle into federal court in an orange jumpsuit and shackles. The woman who once barked orders with a clipboard was now merely an asset awaiting final systemic liquidation. The prosecution's case, led by the precise expertise of FBI agents and the strategic guidance of Robert Morgan, was methodical and absolutely devastating. Her single act of refusing to process my refusal had escalated my defense of a yacht into Exhibit A in a federal fraud prosecution that exposed a $4.7 million criminal enterprise. The evidence wall covered an entire side of the courtroom: property theft timelines, recorded bribery schemes, bank records detailing her money laundering, and, most damningly, the high-resolution video footage of the yacht confrontation. The prosecution demonstrated that she had weaponized HOA authority, then laundered the proceeds through fake charity events to purchase political protection. The victim impact statements were particularly powerful, with families testifying about losing their retirement savings and enduring immense trauma fighting her theft of their pool houses and gardens. My own testimony was brief, focusing on the simple, non-negotiable fact: she forged documents, she impersonated county officials, and she organized harassment against me for defending my basic constitutional property rights. Karen's defense was a pathetic attempt at mitigation. She claimed her criminal acts were justified by charitable intentions and community welfare. Her narcissistic delusion was exposed during the prosecutor's cross-examination, which surgically dismantled her claim, revealing that her priority was optimizing underutilized assets for maximum personal revenue. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood with unwavering conviction. They found the defendant guilty on all 27 federal charges: fraud, conspiracy, civil rights violations, money laundering, and bribery. The sentencing, delivered by Judge Patricia Steinberg, was a final act of absolute, crushing justice. Karen was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison, hit with complete financial restitution totaling $4.7 million, and issued a permanent ban from ever holding any elected office. Her political career, her personal wealth, and her freedom were permanently liquidated. But the victory extended far beyond her individual punishment. The conviction triggered the systematic dismantling of her entire corruption network, with 6 other co-conspirators, county commissioners and political operatives, also facing prison time. The most profound victory was the systemic change catalyzed by the ordeal. Senator Williams followed through on his promise, and the scandal led to the passage of the Maplewood Shores Property Rights Protection Act, establishing federal whistleblower protections for residents, mandatory transparency requirements for HOA governance, and criminal penalties for officials who exceed their legal authority. My accidental role as a property rights advocate had catalyzed nationwide reform. 2 years later, the morning on Clearwater Lake was one of profound, final peace. The community had executed a total transformation, dissolving the old authoritarian HOA and reconstituting with robust democratic oversight and strict legal boundaries. Robert Morgan, now the community's legal counsel, ensured that the protections were permanent. The properties Karen had stolen were fully returned and restored to the rightful owners, funded entirely by her forfeited assets. I sat on my yacht each morning, watching the sunrise reflect off the water, a scene of earned, permanent tranquility. The simple act of saying no to theft had protected not just my yacht, but everyone's property rights against systematic abuse. Karen Morrison was serving year 3 of her 18-year sentence, earning cents per hour in a federal prison kitchen, while her victims enjoyed the restored use of their homes. Justice had been served with mathematical precision. My yacht rocked gently in its slip, secured by courts and constitution against anyone who might again confuse community cooperation with criminal property theft.